figures from the Office for National Statistics show UK private rents increased on average by 8.6% in the 12 months to July 2024. It's a near record high. And it appears landlords with mortgages are passing on the impact, some of them, of higher interest rates to tenants. But a lack of rental properties is being blamed. Should we do what many European countries do and bring in rental controls and caps? Interested to know, I think we should do a full disclosure moment here. Are you guys renters? Are you landlords? Where are you in the property market, as it were?
So I own my flat, which I bought in 1978, and we built a little granny flat for my mum, but she never got to stay there, which we let out.
So you're a landlord?
Yeah.
OK.
As well.
Interesting. How about you, Mike?
Well, yeah, I own my own properties and I've got a property portfolio which I've been investing in for a good number of years, going back 15 or 16 years, because, of course, interest rates got down to absolutely nothing. So you weren't getting any return from the bank, put it into bricks and mortar.
And that's the risk you take as a landlord, of course, that, you know, interest rates go up as well as down.
Absolutely.
And so this kind of thing, rent controls could have a massive effect on your business.
It could have a massive effect on business. But again, I think the politics of envy is involved here because property has become a cash cow for all governments, not just this one. George Osborne, in my view, a Tory Chancellor, started the war against private landlords, you know, by getting rid of all the tax breaks that you've got. But the reason I say it's a war of envy is that if you introduce rent controls, and every city in the world where it's happened, the stock of property available for people to be housed in will go down.
Why?
It'll go down. It's happened most recently in Berlin. In Berlin in 1921, they introduced rent controls. There's now 20% less property to rent in Berlin. And remember, in Germany, more people rent than they do buy. 51% people are renters against 49% owners. The property stock's gone down by 20% because if you put rent controls on it, you are stifling the investment of putting money into property and people get out. It's happened in San Francisco. It's happened across Europe. It's happened everywhere they've tried it.
People
There's
get out.
no rent control in San Francisco.
Okay.
What they do in San
No,
Francisco?
they haven't got rent control.
They've had rent controls in San Francisco, and it was such a disastrous, they had to get rid of them because they were
Europe
literally
has them.
knocking down blocks of
Mike,
apartments.
this is the argument, the part of that argument that I don't understand. As a landlord, the business is not making sense, OK? I'm not getting rent to cover my mortgage, to cover my bills. So I decide to put the house on the market. Somebody else buys it. They're either a landlord who rent it out so it becomes somebody's home, or they sell it and it becomes somebody's home. So I don't understand why that property doesn't stay providing a home, which is the most important thing.
Yeah, the government can't provide enough houses in social housing, and this goes back 30 years. In fact, it goes back to Mrs Thatcher's time. They've never replaced the sale of council housing with social housing, so they've had to turn to the private sector. So people deliberately went into the private sector on what was called buy-to-let to provide housing. Now, when the economic equation starts to go against you, you get rid. And generally speaking, people buy up cheaply and they live in them. But it's not available for people to rent.
Yeah, but it's still part of the solution to the housing crisis. Yasmin?
I mean, that's the politics of selfishness. You talk about the politics of envy. I talk about the politics of selfishness, that landlords have been increasing their rents. I mean, it's incredible to hear you tell a sob story as a landlord. When people were earning far less than they might have earned, which is part of the reason why unions did what they did, and in order to get as much money out of people as possible, some of the properties, a stray dog would not live in them, and they have not looked after those properties. That child died because of the damp, and yet the rent...
That was a socially rented property.
But no, it wasn't
Exactly.
just totally socially. It was housing associations which had become part of the whole sector. And Mike is right that since the Thatcher era, social housing went down. But I don't understand why you have to be so greedy.
No, Yasmin.
Why do we have to be so greedy?
Well, look, we're not being greedy. First of all my properties are immaculate, and I mean immaculate. I've just spent £6,000 on fitting out a new shower room in one of my properties because it needed fitting, and I look after my tenants. And if you've got a good tenant, by the way, this has happened to me several times, I turn down the advice of the managing agent to put the rent up because I want a good tenant to stay there. However, supply and demand means you've got to keep putting the rent up to match the supply and demand situation. Otherwise, the value of the property goes down. So you have to.
Let's find out what people think out there. Stella's in West Yorkshire. Is it time to control rents, Stella?
Yeah, I think it is time to control rent. The landlords are getting greedy. They're not putting the money they're getting to rent back into the houses to make them livable. I think if they were governed in some way where the council inspector visits the house and makes sure that the money invested in the house is equal to the rent, then I think that would be fair. But at the moment, it's just greed. They're taking all the money but not willing to repair the houses.
I mean, we've got to be clear, though, Stella, a lot of these landlords have seen their mortgage payments go up, and a lot of them have swallowed that and said, well, that was the risk I took by getting into the renting business, the landlord business. So we can't just say that all of them are greedy because
interest rates were at an all-time low. Do not create this sob story about
it's
landlords.
Not a sob story, it's a financial reality.
I've seen near where I live in West London, there are landlords who have turned a 4-bedroom house into a place where there are 8 rooms now, and each tenant is paying a terribly high amount of money to this landlord, and the council does nothing.
I'm just interested if Stella's still there. Stella, what's your situation at the moment? Are you renting? Have you seen your rent go up over the past couple of years?
No, I don't rent at the moment. I own my own house, lucky enough. But my son lives in a multi-house, like she said. He lives in a room which is as small as my box room, and he pays £500 a month for no amenities. It's just like a box room. But to me, that's ridiculous. There's 10 houses. So that landlord off the government is getting paid nearly £4,000 a month.
Yeah, OK. Well, we'll take another call. Simon's in Manchester. Simon, you're a landlord. What difference would rent controls make to you, to your business, to your life?
I mean, at the moment where I am, there are no rent controls. If you want to see how rent controls don't work, look to Scotland. The rental market in Scotland is an utter disaster. They had a rental cap and an evictions ban, actually, recently lifted. The rents have absolutely shot up, and it's discouraged inward investment by landlords. It does not work. Historically has never worked.
Well, we're looking at the way that it was working in Scotland, where it was applied in Scotland, which I think was a 3% cap on rent rises. I think this is right, during the tenancy. And what ended up happening was rent rises carried on anyway. But we are in a particular moment at the moment when we're seeing those mortgage rates suddenly having gone up so suddenly. That's the problem here, isn't it? That's why we need rent controls now.
Well, we need rent controls, or people think we do, because we've got no properties to rent. That isn't the landlord's fault. That's the government's fault. Now, yeah, if you're going to cap rents, cap the landlord's mortgage rises. Let's go to Nationwide, Lloyds and others, and let's say you can't increase the mortgage rate to a landlord because they've got a rent cap. It goes both ways.
Do you think the landlords would then say, oh, well, you know, just because the rents are rising elsewhere, I'll keep mine down, I'll keep it underneath market value? Or will they say, well, look, I've got the opportunity, I might as well put the prices up? Put rent up?
Yeah, I agree. I disagree. Some landlords will. My rents are below market value. They are. But remember this, as a landlord, we don't have to be landlords. Often, tenants have to be tenants. If we're come down too hard, the Renters' Rights Bill that's coming through, if this punishes landlords too much, we will simply leave. Now, if we leave, there is nothing to take our place.
But what will happen to your properties, Simon? That's the thing. You will leave, sell your properties. What will happen to them? They won't be empty, will they?
They absolutely will not. But this is the red herring most people think. They will be sold, probably to first-time buyers. But often, first-time buyers have never rented. They never will rent. Just because they go to a first-time buyer doesn't mean that's one less renter. They would have never have rented anyway. The people who can buy can rent. The people who rent often cannot buy.
But, Simon, I want to ask you this. Do you think then it's right that so many of them are evicted by landlords because they cannot pay the increasing amount of rent money that they're charged? Eviction rates are huge at the moment and deeply immoral.
Eviction rates are higher, but they're going higher because of the recent changes that the government, previous and current government, are looking at planning. Because of all the new regulations and the new rules, getting rid of Section 21, they're talking about some kind of stopping landlord selling. Well, that scares landlords. Honest to God, it does. It scares us. And we will react. We will react. These are our investments. These are worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. We're not going to take a chance on not being able to realise that asset. We are investors. That has to be understood. We're not social landlords.
Yeah. Listen, Simon, thank you so much. It's really good to hear from the landlord's point of view as well.